small purple violets creeping out of the frigid, damp soil. This fragrance is a master of poetry. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Often. I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Meo Fusciuni's Viole Nere. These reviews are for fragrances I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears and main situations, and I'm meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and accords. I don't think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. Today, I finally built up the courage to talk about one of my new favorite houses ever, the house of Meo Fusciuni, and the fragrance we're going to start this journey on with is Viole Nere. The house of Meo Fusciuni is relatively new to me. Although I already knew about it, I knew about the vibe and the concept of the house. I acquired my first fragrance just a few months ago, and since then, due to some very fortunate discounts, I ended up acquiring a total of 7 bottles. This is a massive collection in such a short amount of time, but to be completely honest, I've been absolutely mesmerized by the house, the intent, and everything about these fragrances. It's become quickly one of my favorite houses ever. The Italian house of Meo Fusciuni is manned by one guy, Meo Fusciuni himself, aka Giuseppe Imprezzabile, and his partner Federica. The two of them basically run the whole thing, from the conceptualization to the design to the actual production and marketing. The house is incredibly evocative. It's so well thought out, and a stark difference to many of other Italian houses that I've talked about since now. I usually refer to Italian niche perfumery as chaotic. There's a definite layer of messiness to a lot of the creations from people like Lorenzo Pazzaglia, Francesca Bianchi, and even Alessandro Gualtieri himself. His creations specifically are all built on boldness. A lot of the creations also from Lorenzo Pazzaglia, they're made to be cool, they're made to be vibey, they're made to be bold and strong and present. Meo Fusciuni as a house has a completely different approach. The vibe of the house is all about poetry, romanticism, subtlety, and fine details. It's an exceptionally intentional house. It's absolutely beautiful and moving, and I really applaud this intentional approach to the creation of fragrances. Giuseppe Imprezzabile himself, if you've seen him in any kind of review, is a very particular character to say the least. He's very subtle, he's very quiet, he's very shy. He has this incredible artistic aura around him. He's so delicate and approachable. Everything he says is so deliberate and has this poetic intonation to it. I really like the guy. He is incredibly charismatic. Even the way he looks and dresses is so understated and subtle, and that's a huge difference from the superstar type of perfumer that you see nowadays. I initially said that I had to sort of summon bravery to tackle this house, and that's because I really care about these products. I really like them, and as I mentioned in other videos, for me it's very, very difficult to talk about fragrances that touch me in a specific way, that really appeal to me, and I really want to make them justice, and it's difficult sometimes to find the right words to describe these. In this case, with the house of Meo Fusciuni, to break the ice, I decided to start out with Viole Nere, arguably one of his most simple and approachable fragrances. The fragrance itself is not complex at all and very easy to understand. What makes this incredibly special is everything else that comes along with the fragrance. Giuseppe Imprezzabile's idea, his concept, his opinion, and the reason why he chose specific notes to be presented in this very exact way. Everything, again, is incredibly intentional, incredibly well crafted. But before we dive into the beautiful scent profile of Viole Nere, let's cover the presentation because I have a lot to say about this. The packaging for Meo Fusciuni is absolutely incredible. First and foremost, I want to definitely mention the box. This is one of the rare cases in which I will showcase the box because it's so beautiful. The box itself is high quality, it's well made, it feels precious in a way, but it's actually the way the box is designed and all the subtle messaging that comes with it. The boxes come with a photograph that represents the fragrance. In this case, it's a very simple photograph of violets. When you open the box, you also get this little booklet. This is very, very important for the Meo Fusciuni experience, in my opinion, because in here, not only there's an explanation of the fragrance written in a beautiful, poetic way, there's also usually a poem written by Giuseppe Imprezzabile himself, a couple photographs, and the cool thing is that he also talks about what type of music inspired the creation of the fragrance, and probably the type of music that you would want to listen to while enjoying this fragrance to really better understand it. This is such a beautiful, simple touch, but it really helps you connect with the perfumer and the thought process that went into this fragrance. Meo Fusciuni is probably the only brand that I've seen that is willing to go into such detail to properly communicate the creation of the art itself. You might argue that this hyper-descriptive aspect of Meo Fusciuni kind of takes away from the imagination and interpretation of the art piece. In this case, everything is so beautifully put together, everything is so meticulously intentional that I can't but applaud this aspect. The bottle itself is simple, subtle, in typical Giuseppe Imprezzabile style. The cap is beautiful, heavy metal. It has this engraving on top. Again, it's very, very simple. The simple bottle is meant to resemble old school fragrance containers. It's very beautiful, very elegant. It has this beautiful tint to it. The atomizer is exceptionally good. It has great action. It's pressurized and it sprays very, very well. Let's give it a couple sprays. By the way, I've been wearing the hell out of this fragrance. I wore it today. It's incredible. Also, the labeling of Meo Fusciuni fragrances is very well done, properly attached. It feels solid and high quality. The whole presentation is a huge part of this fragrance. It's a huge part of Meo Fusciuni as a house, and I cannot help but give it absolutely high marks. Okay, time to talk about the scent profile for Viole Nere. As I mentioned, this is a very simple fragrance, very easy to grasp concept, and the fragrance is actually quite approachable. In general, I would describe this fragrance as a dark floral, powdery fragrance. The main florals in here are definitely iris and violet, specifically iris, and that sort of makeup powderiness is very, very present in here. The other components of this fragrance are definitely secondary in terms of importance. In the base, you have a complex concoction of patchouli, vetiver, sandalwood, musks. There's a ton of stuff in there, but it all comes across as very minor compared to the extremely powdery, iris-forward aspect of this fragrance. Overall, I could say that this smells remarkably similar to something like Dior Parfum. In the base, instead of the leather, you have a little bit more of an earthy, damp component. It really aids the flower aspect of this and gives it a tiny little bit of muskiness. The straightforwardness of this fragrance is mainly due to how the scent profile is presented to you. Everything comes to you at once. Basically, you get all the scent profile, the top notes, the mid notes, and the base notes all at once. This is a unified scent cloud. And a scent cloud at that is dominated by these two purple flowers, iris and violet. Those are definitely the main players in this fragrance. In order to comfortably wear and appreciate this fragrance, you definitely have to be a huge fan of powdery notes. This fragrance is all about that. I'm not going to specifically cover the transition top to bottom because, first of all, there isn't much, but secondly, because the longevity of this fragrance is absolutely terrible. And terrible is not even the right word to describe the longevity, because I do feel that there's a degree of intentionality also in that. Basically, the longevity of this fragrance on my skin and on clothes, it's about 3 hours. It's an incredibly fleeting experience that is both beautiful and frustrating at the same time. But before we talk more about the longevity, let me try to explain what this fragrance is about. This scent is about Giuseppe's love for the garden itself, the garden as a concept. He talks about waking up in the foggy mornings of March, going out in the frigid garden and finding a thin layer of mist covering everything. Everything is damp, everything is quiet. He talks about these little violets poking their head out of this damp earth. Everything from the color of the violet, from the scent of the violet, everything is fleeting and very difficult to detect. They add some sort of an aura to the morning. They add a meditation aspect, a relaxation aspect. They're there to symbolize rebirth and self-acknowledgement, and I feel that the longevity of the fragrance, the fleeting longevity of this fragrance, is strongly tied to this concept. In most other fragrances, I would be incredibly upset about this abysmal performance, but in this, I'm not so bummed out. This is probably due to the fact that I see Meo Fusciuni, the house, completely transcending the aspect of utility in fragrances. These are art pieces, they're meant to be experiences. And I can definitely accept the fact that some experiences might be fleeting and frustrating. I know this sounds like a cop-out, it sounds like me being a fanboy trying to justify the shortcomings of the house. And in a sense, I do agree that this is completely unacceptable. But the wear experience for this is so unique, so beautiful, so melancholic, so sad in the most romantic type of way that all is forgiven. And this fragrance to me is all about that wear experience. The beautiful, moody, atmospheric, thought-provoking state that this puts you in. It's very emotional, absolutely incredible. I don't even feel like touching upon the practicalities for Meo Fusciuni because I don't think that these scents are meant for that. But nonetheless, here we go. The longevity is absolutely terrible. The scent profile is very good and very approachable. Again, as I mentioned, this sort of resembles Dior Homme Parfum, and I can easily say that if you're into the scent profile but you want the more wearable, daily use type of thing, just go for Dior Homme Parfum. You'll be happy because this is, again, very similar. The use cases for this also align pretty much with the Dior Homme Parfum. This is very beautiful, very classy, very elegant. This would be the perfect scent for a very dark, moody evening. The longevity in that case would absolutely not be a problem by the time you're home after that evening, after the event. Everything is gone. It's a beautiful, enveloping, very, very strong, projecting fragrance while it's there. And then poof, it's gone in a very frustrating, very thought-provoking manner. This also completely transcends gender and age. This is for the perfume lover, for the poetry lover, and for the art lover. For anyone that is seeking something so intentional, so beautiful, and so well put together. Okay, it's that part of the video where I ground the fragrance that I'm talking about, make it a little bit more relatable by offering some options here. Options for Viole Nere by Meo Fusciuni were really difficult to come across. I wanted to avoid direct options scent-wise, so I definitely avoided Dior Homme Parfum. I definitely avoided anything that is specifically powdery. Instead, I really wanted to focus on the moody aspect that some fragrances can communicate. That sad, melancholic, romantic type of mood. It's all about that with Meo Fusciuni's Viole Nere. The first fragrance that I want to showcase as an option smells nothing like Viole Nere, but I could definitely not exclude this. This one here is Amouage Myths Man. Now, as I mentioned, this smells absolutely nothing like Viole Nere. This is a very harsh, very difficult, very abstract fragrance. What it has in common with Viole Nere is the type of mood this conveys. To me, this is a fragrance that tells the story of death in the most romantic and beautiful way possible. It goes through the various stages of death, and ultimately, it goes into the aspect of like memory and myth. It's absolutely gorgeous, it's strong, it's super long lasting. This is an absolute masterpiece by Amouage and one of my favorite fragrances in my collection. The second fragrance that I want to talk about also has absolutely nothing in common with the scent profile of Viole Nere, but still, it's incredibly moody, incredibly evocative. This one here is Terror and Magnificence by Beaufort, London. This is basically a fragrance that beautifully encapsulates the idea of walking around Victorian London at night. It's dark, it's gloomy, it's kind of scary, it's a little bit rainy and damp. You get the smell of the streets, you get the smell of the air, you get the smell of the fog. Everything is a little bit cryptic and horror-like. It's absolutely beautiful, mesmerizing, romantic, dark, very moody, and very kind of sad and melancholic at the same time. This is terror at its best. This is one of the best Halloween fragrances that I ever came across. Beaufort, London is a house that never ceases to amaze me, and it's an absolute must smell for any fragrance enthusiast. The last fragrance I want to showcase as an option, once again, has absolutely nothing in common with Viole Nere by Meo Fusciuni, but the moody aspect of it, the sad, melancholic, reflective type of nature of the scent makes it a great candidate as an option. This fragrance is probably completely unknown to most of you. We're talking about Mendittorosa Archetipo. This uber niche house is from Naples, Italy, and they make kind of like art pieces in a bottle. This fragrance is actually by Luca Maffei, and it's an incense-forward fragrance. The incense in here is supported by notes that really give it a damp, earthy type of feeling. The mood aspect of this is absolutely incredible. It's a very meditative, sad, melancholic type of scent. It really fits a rainy day type of mood. Everything is wet. Everything has this sort of like moldy smell to it. It's so beautiful, so lonely at the same time, so relaxing. This to me perfectly represents solitude. It might be that reassuring isolation that a clergyman might have in this cloister, or you might relate to it as a feeling of being alone in a beautiful old library. These fragrances are not cheap, but I really would advise you to look into the house of Mendittorosa because there's a lot of interesting products in there, a lot of fine art pieces. Back to Viole Nere by Meo Fusciuni. Yes, if you haven't noticed, I'm a huge fan of this fragrance. I'm a huge fan of the house. So there's a high degree of bias in my opinions about this fragrance. I still try to be as objective as possible, so my final recommendations for Viole Nere is sample something else from Meo Fusciuni first, because you might be extremely disappointed about the performance of this fragrance, and it might detract you from the house as a whole. The house of Meo Fusciuni is absolutely worth sampling. I would start with something like like a little bit more famous, maybe something like Last Season, which is absolutely gorgeous, maybe something like a Little Song, maybe something like Sogni. Those are three beautiful starting points for the house of Meo Fusciuni. They will get you enthralled, mesmerized, and completely addicted by the art of Giuseppe Impressabile. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and it helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. Never take it for granted. Many more videos to come, many more fun fragrances to review. See you in the next one, and cheers.